everyone for listening to another episode of Everything Imaginable. I am your host, Gary Cocciolillo. And before we get started, I want to thank all my listeners for listening, and also thank the contributors to my show, who are executive producers Candace Sanderson, author of The Reluctant Messenger, and Ms. Aida, psychic and author of Hoodoo Cleansing and Protection Magic. Monthly co-host, Jared Murphy, author of It's Not Aliens, It's Worse, It's Us, and binaural production engineer, Damian Keller, author of Sounds Good, Sounds Great. And if you are interested in becoming a contributor to the show, go to my website, everythingimaginable2020.com, and you'll find what you need there. And now, without any further ado, our guest for today is David K. Miller. Thank you for coming on today, David.
Hey, Gary, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, this is great. So, you've written a ton of books. Looks like a lot of them are about Arcturians and expanding consciousness. So, how did you first start contacting, or did they start contacting you first, the Arcturians?
Well, Gary, I've been interested in altered states of consciousness for many years. I've had training in psychology and psychotherapy. And I moved to Prescott, Arizona around 30 years ago or more. And I started going to Sedona, which there are a lot of psychics there. And after being around the psychics, I was at the north rim of the Grand Canyon, in a place called Sublime Point. And that's when I began to receive messages and channel. And it was during one of those trips that I started receiving messages from the Arcturians.
Wow. And did it just happen? Or were you like meditating and just opening yourself up, waiting for the connection? How did that occur?
The first contacts were, it just happened. But I write books and give lectures and talks about how to channel because I've been doing it now for so many years. And one of the things I note is that being in a higher energy place helps you to connect with your higher consciousness and your higher self. So it spontaneously happened while I was at the North Rim of the Grand Canyon, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Interesting. So there always seems to be a lot of paranormal stuff going on around that Sedona, Grand Canyon area.
Well, that's true. But I had also been studying mysticism for many years, and I have been a student of the Kabbalah for many years. And the Kabbalah actually speaks about channeling and how many of the ancient rabbis were actually channels. Now, they refer to the channeling as automatic speaking, and they were connecting with their spiritual teachers after they passed on. So I had a good background in the psychic world and the paranormal world from my study of the Kabbalah.
Wow. So with the Kabbalah study, did you study mostly Jewish mysticism, or did you follow more like a Golden Dawn type path?
I study both. I'm more oriented towards Jewish mysticism because my background is in Judaism. But I call it the Christian Kabbalah, which does include the Golden Dawn, like you said. I think has made some very intriguing additions to the Kabbalah. And it's my belief that the main study of Kabbalah, which includes the Tree of Life, is really galactic. It's not just for one group of people or one religion.
Right. Yeah, it is definitely something that it could be considered universal. That is for sure. So when you first made the contact with the Arcturians, what was your initial impression? I've had some guests, we'll say the Arcturians are 100% good and want to help the human race ascend. And then I've had other guests say that they are tricksters and that they're nothing but demons in disguise.
Well, I don't believe the latter. They are good. Edgar Cayce, who was probably the most famous channel of the 20th century, referred positively to the Arcturians. One of my first models for channeling was Norma Milanovic, who channeled the Arcturians and wrote the book We the Arcturians. And I had nothing but positive energies and positive interactions from them. When I hear that some people report negative things, I just wonder who they're really connecting with. Because I consider the Arcturians fifth dimensional, and therefore are not going to be sending negative energy to us.
Yeah. I mean, the people that have said this on my show are people that have not even connected with them. They're people, I don't know. I don't know where their information is coming from, honestly. I can't. They've never really given me a source, except that they just, for some reason, they've been told by some other entity that these entities are tricksters and just want to mislead the human race.
Well, let me just say now that there are spirit guides in the fifth dimension, and then there are spirits of lower energy in the fourth dimension. And I do not get involved with any fourth dimensional energies. But the fourth dimension is often home to lower energies, to ghosts, to trickster spirits, like you say, etc. And you would have to be careful if you were going to try to connect with lower fourth dimensional beings. But I personally am not interested in connecting with them or working with lower fourth dimensional beings.
So have you raised your vibration high enough to connect with fifth dimensional beings?
Well, I do spiritual practices, including studying. As I said, I studied Kabbalah, but I also, initially we're going to high energy places, such like being in Sedona or the North Rim or the South Rim of the Grand Canyon. I do meditations, and I also do chanting. And then I developed a special trance induction technique to get into a higher and expanded consciousness, which I can explain to you.
I would love to hear about that.
Well, as I told you, I'm a student of psychology and psychotherapy, and I have studied hypnosis and trance induction techniques. And there's a special technique that was developed by the psychologist Milton Erickson, who was a well-known hypnotist.
Right, Erickson hypnotherapy, I've heard of it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, in the 60s and 70s. And the method that he used was to develop, when you're in a trance, a trigger. And therefore, when you're in a deep state of meditation and connecting with your higher self, you establish a trigger. He called it an anchor. And then, when you're in a normal state of consciousness at another time, you use that trigger or use that anchor to get into the same state. And Erickson had many different types of triggers, such as tapping your cheek or clapping your hands. It could be anything. I mean, the key to this method is that you meditate and get into this higher state of meditation, and then you trigger it or anchor it. And at a later time, you can repeat the trigger only. And that's the method I use when I channel, which ensures that I'm only going to connect with higher beings in an expanded state.
Wow. So that's pretty cool. So you're using sort of like a combination of an Erickson hypnotic trigger to put you into a hypnotic, the trance state quicker.
Exactly.
Meditative, yeah. Or like, into it would be like a theta type of state.
Exactly. And I have the trigger here. I use a tone or sound, and I'll make the sound for you. So listen 1 second. I use that chime 3 times, and that's my anchor. And it's extremely effective for me.
Wow, that's great. So when you're in a trance state, how do you document what you're experiencing?
I use a simple MP3 recorder, just an Olympus recorder that's digital. And then I usually, they give lectures to me. They can be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And then I have a transcriptionist who works for me, and I send her the MP3 recording. She transcribes it, sends it back to me, and then I edit it. Because channeling and speaking is not always great grammar. So because I send it out, and I published 15 books. My 16th book is coming out later on this year, and I have numerous articles published in the Sedona Journal of Emergence, Light Technology. My publisher is lighttechnology.com, www.lighttechnology.com, or all my books are available on Amazon. If you just Google David K. Miller, you'll get all of my books. So that's how I've done all of the books. I would channel, give a lecture, then have it transcribed and edit it, and that's how I produce the books.
So is everything you channel meant for the general public, or do they also give you information that is strictly meant for you?
Well, I do both. In fact, I do actually personal readings for people that are just meant for them. And then I do general channelings. So I would not do personal information in a general channel because that would all be confidential. So I'm able to do both.
When you first started talking with the Arcturians, I always say the word wrong, sorry about that. What was your initial message?
Okay,
you've written 3 books, so obviously you've had a lot to say. 3 books, at least, that I see here on Amazon about the Arcturians.
1 through 4 is coming out. But I wanted to say also, Gary, that I also channel other beings, including a soul psychologist named Bio-relativity. And one of my books is called Fifth Dimensional Soul Psychology. But to get back to your question, the original message was they wanted me to form a planetary healing group. And they wanted it to have 40 members and what the group should do.
So they initially wanted you to put together a group of people?
Exactly. A group of 40 people that would be devoted to personal ascension and planetary ascension into the 5th dimension. That was the original message. That was the original task that was given by me.
So how did you recruit 40 people?
Well, that was a problem because I didn't even know 40 people in my personal life at the time. So I did know about 8 or 9 people that were interested in working with me. And so what I did is I started meeting with them once a month, doing the channeling. And then I started writing a newsletter. And before I knew it, within 5 or 6 months, it got up to 40 people. And I was also helped by the fact that this journal, the Sedona Journal of Emergence, published my articles. So I started getting letters and information from people in about 15 different countries, including Australia, New Zealand, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, Germany, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and I can't remember all of the other countries. But and each country has their own individual way of doing this. So I try to coordinate it, and my lectures are winding up being translated into Spanish, German, and Portuguese.
That's impressive. That's a far reach. So what do the groups do?
Well, we have 3 activities. The first activity is a technique that the Arcturians taught us called Bio-relativity. The second activity is called the planetary cities of light. And the third activity, balance. And for example, there was a severe drought in Australia about 2 years ago, and there was this strange weather pattern called the dipole, which has to do with the relationship between the weather. Eastern Australia was Sydney and all along the coast there, was in a severe drought. So we had about 20 people, and we meditated on switching the dipole back so that the rains would come to Australia. And after about 2 weeks of intense meditation, the dipole switched and the drought ended.
Wow. Controlled the weather.
Right. So a lot of our meditations are focused on that. We've been focusing the past couple of weeks on Arizona, where I live, because we've been in an extreme drought and we have seasonal monsoons. And so we've been focusing on meditating that the weather patterns, especially from the Baja, would bring moisture up to Arizona, and that's what's been happening in the past 10 days. So it's based on weather, eruptions, and earth changes in general. Now, a lot of the books and teachings that came through are lectures about the bio-relativity, what the principles are, how to do the meditations, and how to guide it, and how to bring people together. So right now, most of the meditations are occurring globally, either using the internet or using an international phone line.
What is bio-relativity?
Bio-relativity is a term that it describes meditating to change the balance or the patterns of weather or the earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, to change them so that they're of less intensity and less harm to humanity. So bio-relativity is really planetary meditation on the planet to bring balance back.
What was the second thing you focus on?
The second thing is called Planetary Cities of Light. And the Planetary Cities of Light project is focusing on creating sacred space around. The best way of healing the planet is to form spiritual groups who will form spiritual energy of protection around their activities together, talking about what's going on in the cities of light and reporting different changes. Recently, there's been a tremendous interest in this project in South America. And we find, like, for example, in Colombia, Argentina, Mexico are all interested in working with us. I'm doing a Planetary City of Light activation in Coyoacan, Mexico, back tomorrow at 10 a.m. So when there are certain requirements, people have to plant 4 crystals in the cardinal areas, north, south, east, and west. And then I have to channel for them an activation. And they have to have 4 members of the Groupofforty. And then we have other specific meditations that we work with them afterwards.
Wow. And then what's the third item?
Well, the third item is what I call personal work. The Arcturians have given me a lot of information about working with the aura, because they believe that our energy, just name one exercise, shimmering the aura is another one, bilocation to a 5th dimensional place is another one. So they have been teaching me how to use the aura as a means for improving overall physical health and for your spiritual development.
Well, type of word cleansing. How do they all connect?
They all connect because we're trying to bring the planet and everyone who's working with us into the 5th dimensional consciousness. And the recent explanation, which is it's somewhat complicated, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible. The recent explanation is that the Arcturians are trying to assist to the next level in our species. So we have Homo Neanderthal, we have Homo sapien, and the next level is Homo omega. And that the only way to really solve this current planetary crisis is for manifesting and accelerating the new species of humanity called Homo omega.
Has Homo omega previously existed on this planet during the time of Atlantis?
People have asked me that. I don't know exactly the answer, but I know, for example, that Jesus was an example of Homo Omega, and some of the great prophets were examples of Homo Omega. And there could have been people in Atlantis that also were at the higher level. But the dominant species still is of lower consciousness. That is Homo sapien. And there's only a small group of people on the planet, they said maybe 8 to 10 million, who understand and are willing to work with these higher concepts. And
just waiting until we die.
I use the example in the Bible, because I remember I told you I'm a student of the Kabbalah, of Elijah and Ezekiel, and also Enoch. These are examples of people who have ascended. Enoch, in Genesis, it just states he walked with God and he was no more. Ezekiel was getting ready to ascend, and he did. Elijah. I always mix up Elijah and Ezekiel, but they're both lived around the same time. But it's Elijah, and he, with his student, went to a river. I forgot the name of the river, and then he said he was getting ready to ascend, and then he did. He was brought up into the higher realms with a chariot, and he left his cape behind for his student Elisha. So these are two biblical examples. And then Jesus ascended, but Jesus ascended after his death. Although there is a part in the New Testament where he is transfigured, which is a way of describing going up into the fifth dimension, but still appearing to people and then coming back down. So these are some examples of the fifth dimension and going to how you could ascend. The idea is
move into fifth dimension. At that point, is death no longer a concern?
Yeah, because you number one, you transcend the death experience. But more important, or equally important, is that you are free from the Earth's incarnational cycle. When you go to the fifth dimension, you do not have to reincarnate back on the Earth.
It's interesting. I guess that would be a bummer for the Bodhisattvas, though.
Why is that?
Well, because the idea of Bodhisattva in Buddhism is to keep reincarnating on Earth to help other beings.
No, but it's still possible. Once you go to the fifth dimension, you could choose to come back. You can choose to come back. It's just that you'd come back, as you said, as a bodhisattva. You'd be in a higher realm, but you wouldn't be the bodhisattvas. My understanding, and I'm not up on all the Buddhist stuff. They are not part of the reincarnational cycle. They are free. In other words, if you're still in the reincarnational cycle, you have to come back to finish before you graduate from the Earth. But if you go through the ascension, working with the Arcturians, then you go to the fifth dimension. And if you want to come back, you can, but you don't have to. And many people don't want to come back, especially with what's going on now on the Earth. Systems in the galaxy. There are other things that we're on a soul journey, and each of us have our own soul path to follow. So I don't know. I don't consider it selfish if you choose not to come back. I think you try to be as much service as you can while you're here.
I always ask this question: why did the Arcturians care about humans in the first place?
Well, the answer is that the main principle in the galaxy and in the universe is evolution. And the evolution involves being of service. Because the greatest way of helping your own evolution is through service, who are working towards helping the Earth and to helping the Earth evolve. So just like we would certainly be interested if we found there were life forms on Mars, or we found that there were other life forms on the Pleiades, and we'd be interested in interacting with them. And so they are interested in interacting with us and helping us evolve. And in fact, they have a whole system of planetary stages of development, and they've explained where we are in the cycle of planetary development.
How did they find us?
Well, and let me say one other thing. They'll teach an interesting concept called galactic anthropology. So we think of anthropology, as working with civilizations on the Earth. And I could ask the same question: why would an anthropologist want to go to Africa or Brazilian jungle to study? And the answer is that curiosity and also to learn more about ourselves. The way they found us is that through their sensitivity, they can pick up energetic life pulsing from anywhere in the galaxy because of our thoughts, because of our energy fields. And I don't know what technology they would use to do that, but I know that they also reported that the detonation of the nuclear bomb in Hiroshima and other nuclear activities was
interesting. So are Arcturians also, do they not only come to us through our consciousness, but also are they responsible for some of the UFO sightings?
I don't know about the UFO sightings, but their primary method working through me is through telepathic communication. A lot of people ask me, why don't they appear or come here? And the answer is they talk about the karma. And if they interfere in us and change too much, then they become karmically involved. Want to appear, or they do not want to intervene, because by intervening directly, they could karmically get involved and even be trapped, in a sense, in the Earth's incarnational process.
But by communicating with you, aren't they already sort of doing that?
No, because it's through me, and I get to do what I want with it, being interfered with, and there's no force involved.
Do they also work with or alongside like Pleiadians and Syrians and some of the other starseed civilizations?
Yes, they do work, and we call them the Ascended Masters and the Galactic Ascended Masters. They do work with the other beings. There is a Galactic Council that oversees a lot of this, but they work only with the higher beings, including Jesus, but who
for human beings to reach the fifth dimension. And what happens to us if I ascend and reach the fifth dimension? Will my physical form disappear? Will it vanish?
You will, you will be, as they say in the Christian, in the Bible, all that was left behind was his coat.
Mm-hmm.
His physical body was gone. So in the ascension, because really you are a spirit inhabiting a physical body, and so then if you all your physical body is a vibrational energy field. If you increase the vibrational energy field speed, then you would be so rapid that you would go into another realm and you wouldn't be seen. And that's one of the exercises we practice. It's called shimmering, which is the acceleration of your aura to a higher speed.
How's that done? Do you use it is that like a chakra meditation or something?
Well, it's similar, but basically we visualize the aura to reach out to me, either on my website or my email address is davidmiller@groupofforty.com, GROUPOFFORTY.com. We do exercises and I do training in how to accelerate the speed of your aura.
Cool. Have you had anybody in one of your groups taken or vanish?
there's going to be a specific time period when there will be an energetic interface that will allow us to ascend. Previous ascensions have happened individually based on the person's advancement. But this time, the Arcturians say there's going to be an intersection between the fifth and the third dimension. And at that intersection point, a huge influx of energy will be downloaded, and we who are practicing our work.
I had a question. I just kind of lost my train of thought there for a second.
While you do that, let me just say one other thing. The other books I've written is called the Fifth Dimensional Soul Psychology, and it's my guide for that one's called Biwamas. And in that book, I describe other therapeutic. For example, my wife, Gudrun, who is a co-founder of this group, also does life between life therapy and past life therapy, hypnotic regressions. Information about your past lives, your soul development, and even in some cases, parts of your soul might have been remnants have been lost. So the book explains the other new techniques about what's called fifth dimensional soul psychology.
I know what my question was. You mentioned that there's going to be a certain time when there's going to be the right energy for this ascension for the people to move into the fifth dimension happen. Does this happen to coincide with the...
It's more of a spiritual energy than a physical energy. But it is an interaction too, and it could, like you say, it could affect the magnetic
coincide.
Right. It makes sense to me. The whole issue is that we're in a severe planetary crisis. In fact, they refer to it as the sixth mass extinction, and that we're in an accelerated time where the extinction forces are accelerating, and the Arcturians are concerned that there could be various collapses of the biosphere. For example, the oceans. There are parts of the oceans that are in danger of dying, and they've given some, nothing that is done. For example, they gave the figure of by 2035, parts of the ocean could die, which would be devastating for us.
Is a live being, and the whole planet will ascend to the fifth dimension, and then those things will no longer be a concern.
Well, you're correct. In fact, that is another one of the teachings, the basis of Bio-relativity, which is that the Earth is a living planet, and the information is that living beings establish homeostasis, and they have a feedback loop system. And the Earth has both of those things, and I can explain that in detail later. But so that's correct. But the Earth cannot ascend to the fifth dimension, or no one could really ascend until you're at the right vibration. So you have to, lower consciousness, negative people with negative emotion, jealousy, hatred, violence. They cannot enter the fifth dimension. You have to be above all of that. And so when people say, well, the whole Earth is going to ascend, right now, this planet, how many wars are going on? I don't know the number, but it could be 100 different wars going on. The planet is totally polluted on so many different levels. So there has to be a purification before the Earth as an entire planet can ascend.
Will there be a possibility of a certain group that will ascend in another group that won't? Sort of like in the Bible, or like, I don't know if it's the Bible, but I know like certain religions come to this hellish place.
Absolutely. I think that is a possibility. For example, in some of the channelings, we used to talk about Saddam Hussein. And how could Saddam Hussein go into the fifth dimension, right? And so he will, or probably already has, reincarnated in other planets that are based on warrior-type planets. So you're absolutely correct. Everyone cannot ascend, and there'll just be certain parts of the planet, or this is what the idea of them spiritual, and that they would be capable and eligible to ascend.
But those people outside those areas won't be okay?
Well, some of them will. I mean, I don't know everybody's soul history, and I'm sure that there will be people who are outside of this, because outside of this project or outside of the city's life that could ascend. I'm not saying that everybody has to be in this project or has to be in this planetary cities of light, but correct, other people outside could ascend too. And in fact, they talk about the three spiritualities on the planet that then anyone from either side of this, which they call the sacred triangle, can use this to go to a higher realm.
So it doesn't matter. It's not specific to a particular religion or belief.
No, it's not, because it's the integration. And they talk a lot about the native peoples being a key ingredient. Many of the world religions, even right now, are not. There's nothing addressing planetary healing or planetary balance. The only thing that's come close is in mystical and Judaism. There's work with the Hopi, for example. They do have specific ceremonies that they work with to bring a balance back to the earth. But those balances or those practices need to become more worldwide.
Right. But the earth doesn't necessarily have to heal, though, if people ascend to the fifth dimension.
For 3 million years, the last species, similar to us, Homo Neanderthal, apparently died off 50,000 years ago. But they were living with us for over 100,000 years. And I guess, no, we could destroy everything, and then maybe the Earth would take another 100,000 years, and another species will come. Right. But I think that it behooves us to try to correct these imbalances. And the thing is that this is the first time in the history of this planet that one species, namely Homo sapien, of the life forms, whatever Homo sapien does will determine who lives and who dies on this planet right now.
So how did we arrive at such a tragic state of affairs?
Well, the Arcturians say that there are planetary stages of development. And the first planetary stage of development is called technology versus wisdom, or spiritual wisdom. And the planets, like ours, if they develop the technology faster than they achieve wisdom, then they wind up in the state that we're now in. So that's basically what's happening. But then some planets, we could destroy the whole planet.
What stage are the Arcturians in?
I never asked them that, but I'm sure they're at least at the stage 3 or stage 4. Stage 2 is that they've overcome all of the, militaristic energy, and they're able to control their environment. In stage 3, they actually can move their planet into a higher dimension.
So at one point, it's possible for us to become like them, and it won't be the ones going around helping other planets that are in the same state as us. Which makes me wonder, had the Arcturians been where we are now?
Absolutely. Yeah, they were at a lower level. In fact, they've had a history of war, and one of their planets was actually destroyed. They had several planets in their system. And there is the history of the Pleiadians, and maybe you've had some Pleiadian teachers or masters on your program. And the Pleiadians have also had this problem, but their planet resolved and it did move on to a higher level. This idea that there were the original galactic ancestors were called the Lyrians, which I don't know how many millions and millions of years they go back, and that the Lyrians were the original inhabitants of this section of the galaxy, relation or culture or planets, and it spread out into the Pleiades and to the Earth.
Do they believe in God or have any type of creation story for the universe?
They do believe in God. They actually use the same Hebrew word, one of the Hebrew words for God, which is Adonai, which they say is a galactic word. So yes, they do.
If meditation and using our consciousness to change events on Earth, does that point to an idea that we're living in a holographic universe?
Yes, it does. And by the way, I just thought of something else. They do talk a little bit about the Big Bang and the beginning of the universe. Because they're very interested in our astrophysics and astroastronomy. So they do believe in the Big Bang. And they talk a little bit about the fastest speed in the universe is the speed of thought, which is faster than the speed of light. I think it is interesting. I forgot the other part of your question because I went offline. I went on to another subject.
Oh, I already forgot the question too. But I was just asking about that creation story and the holographic universe idea.
Oh right, okay, yes. Yes, they very much. In fact, the idea of the holographic energy is used in planetary healing, and that includes working in the ocean. So yes, you're correct. They are very much working and studying and practicing holographic energy.
If we mess up really, really bad and revert back to just being primitive, warlike species that give up on spiritual evolution and destroy ourselves, will that have a ripple effect that'll affect them in a negative way?
Well, I don't think it would affect them in a negative way because they're outside of our karma. So no, it won't affect them in a negative way. I think they'd be disappointed, and they're trying to work with us so that won't happen. And I asked them, well, will you or other higher beings interfere if we are on the verge of planetary destruction? And they said that if the destruction reaches the point of no return, then they would, or descended masters would consider intervening.
Wow. I wonder what that would mean.
Well, point of no return. So
I wonder what they mean by intervene. Like would they just wipe this out completely? Or
well,
would they do something to save us?
The latter. But then, they also talk about what's called, they do believe in the messianic light, which I thought was pretty surprising to me. And messianic light is light that transcends logic. It transcends the energy field. So, of cause and effect. So, it is possible that there could be a messianic intervention. So to know, because let's just say, in the Bible we had the parting of the Red Sea, but did God come down and part the Red Sea, or did He create some kind of geomagnetic disturbance in an island, far away, that caused the tilt, which caused the Red Sea to split? So, would you say that happened, it was a geological phenomenon that can be explained? Or would you say that God caused that geological phenomenon to be? And the answer is both, as opposed to just doing, raising.
Do the Arcturians have anything to say about why God would even create such an imperfect world to begin with?
Yes. They talk about what's called free will. And this is a free will planet. And they say that for a variety of reasons which are somewhat difficult for me to understand, we need free will to evolve our soul. And that there are still people souls lining up to come here because of the free will experience. So, from the soul perspective, and from the perspective of soul evolution, you can evolve when you are incarnated on that free will planet.
So where does the soul come from? Why does it exist in the first place? And what is the big deal about the soul? Like it doesn't really, to me, it almost doesn't even make sense that we exist to begin with.
I don't know if I can answer that question. I don't have the answer to that question. But the souls do exist as groups, as soul groups, and that your soul is evolving. And the idea is that as you are evolving, you're going up to higher dimensions, and each dimension has an ability to get closer to the divine. So you can be closer to the divine on the fifth than you can on the third. But you still can be close to the divine on the third. But why this has been set up this way, there is a theory in Kabbalah about that. It's called the breaking of the vessels, and the soul fragments have been spread around. But I don't really have a definitive answer to that question right now.
I often just wonder, what was God thinking?
Well, the thing is that we don't know how God thinks. I mean, that's the problem. We just know how we think, and for example, karmically, some of the things that are happening on the planet don't make sense, but it may all fit into a pattern that we just can't understand at this level of consciousness.
That's true. I totally agree. I also have to say, sometimes I wonder, why am I even thinking?
Why are you even thinking?
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Why am I walking around thinking?
Well, that's our nature. Our nature is to think. And in the Kabbalah, they have the concept of the 10 stories. And we're living on the first story, where nothing makes sense, and free will is creating problems. But then if you're on the 10th floor, looking down, everything is as it should be. And you can see how everything is fitting together. But that means you could also see the relationship between the Earth and other planetary systems, the relationship with karma, and everything like that. That's one way of approaching that.
So you're kind of talking about the Koth versus Kether.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I think it's called the biosphere, the Koth and Keth or something like that. And then the top one is Kether.
Kether is the crown.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the other one.
I can never pronounce the bottom one.
Oh, Malkut.
Malkut, okay.
No, Malkut. Malkut is a kingdom. And that's where we are on the Tree of Life. And Kether is the crown, which is also defined as undifferentiated energy that is beyond words.
Right. The Kabbalah to me just seems like a big circuit of energy.
Well, the Kabbalah, the main teaching is the Tree of Life, and you're correct, it is like a circuit, which it explains how higher energy gets toned down or lowered into lower energy. So yeah, that's a good analogy.
Interesting. Do the Arcturians ever talk about Kabbalah?
Yes,
themselves?
they talk about the Tree of Life quite a bit, and they have modified the Tree of Life for planetary healing, and it's explained in one of my other books, the idea for planetary healing, as opposed to most people use the Tree of Life just for personal healing or for explaining God and the attributes of God. The Arcturians have developed the Tree of Life to explain how it can be used for planetary healing.
Do you ever perform any Kabbalistic rituals?
I use two rituals. One is using sacred Hebrew chanting for healing, and also there's a special Hebrew prayers that are used for unlocking the codes of ascension. Those are the two Kabbalistic exercises that I use.
Have you ever used any of that to try to open portals?
No, I've not used the Kabbalistic energies to open portals. I would use the Arcturian energies and have them download certain things for me if we wanted to do that.
Have you ever considered trying it?
Well, I have. I traveled around the world and gone to different locations, sacred areas, and opened up portals, yes.
Is that like a physical or astral?
Both. Because it happens astrally, but also happens physically. But since the COVID-19, I've not done any more traveling. I've not done any of that.
Do you think that's sort of like the same type of energy that...
Ask that question again, please.
Do you think it's that same type of energy that creates natural portals, like what they find on Skinwalker Ranch?
Yeah, I don't know exactly about Skinwalker. I don't know enough about that to compare it to that, really. All I know about is what I saw on TV. And it sounded like what I saw on TV that there was some kind of negative energy associated with it, too. I don't know.
Do you think the Egyptians were trying to open portals by building the pyramids?
Absolutely. And I think that they were communicating with the Syrians and the Pleiadians, and that they were, sending their bodies after their death to those places. Yes, I would say that definitely is possible.
Do you think they were also using them to teleport? That's why we find them all around the world?
Well, there is something to say about that. Why the pyramids appear in different places. They all have kind of similar structures. And I've seen the theories about that as using some kind of electromagnetic grid. But frankly, I don't know the answer to that at this time.
Have you ever considered asking them for, like, it'll be interesting to hear, from a species that's been around much longer than us, like, what our true history was. Because I don't think that we're even close to what it was.
I've not asked them that specifically. We have talked about some of the Anunnaki and the development by these other extraterrestrial civilizations, and we have talked a little bit about the Lyrians, and but most of the focus has really been on this planetary healing project.
Have they given you any information or any warnings about, like, our secret space program?
And they say that the radiation contamination of this planet is out of control. And they're very concerned about Fukushima. They continually talk about Fukushima as possibly leading to the death of the Pacific Ocean. But in terms of the secret military program, no, they've not talked about that.
What type of energy do they suggest us use rather than nuclear?
Well, they are suggesting there is higher ways of doing energy, and they haven't given me the specific answers to that. but there are alternatives which we can use. But radiation, nuclear energy is not, because it's too dangerous, and it's already shown to be too dangerous. If we needed other energy, I'm sure we could find other ways of doing it.
Are they okay with
about the fossil fuels? I mean, basically, it's still negative. I mean, the internal combustion engine is definitely a lower level, lower vibration, and they don't use that. But they don't talk negatively about fossil fuel as much as about nuclear energy.
Are they concerned about us leaving Earth and corrupting other planets before we evolve?
Yes, they're very concerned about that. And they say that we're closer than people realize to being able to travel interdimensionally. And that, therefore, they are concerned about us exporting our militaristic ways and technology outside of our system. Even though it seems like we're far away from space travel, they said that we are closer than we could imagine.
See, to me, that kind of points to we might be acknowledging the secret space program.
We have not really talked to them about the secret space program.
But if we're closer than if they think that we're closer than what we think we are, that means there's something we don't know.
Well, they're talking because the key to traveling through space is
consciousness.
No, interdimensional truths. They're going through what they call hyperspace.
Right.
And once you develop that technology, then you can go anywhere you want to.
Well, my understanding has been we already have that technology.
Yeah, I do.
I just wonder sometimes, they say their motive is to, help and be, it's like becoming like an infestation throughout dimensions and throughout the cosmos.
Well, I think that's a good observation. I think they have the technology to defend themselves from us, but you're right. We could become, an infestation. Look what we've done to the Earth. So why would we expect us to be any different if we went out in the galaxy?
Yeah. And leave it behind. That's what we do.
Right. That's correct.
So, with your organization and, the 40 or I guess 1600, how is that going to change things?
Well, we're talking about the Groupofforty, www.groupofforty.com. And we are working to set up a direct intervention through higher consciousness that will change humanity and help humanity evolve to the next level, which they called Homo Omega. And that's how that would change the world, is that there would be a influx and the spread of higher consciousness around the planet.
And then that higher consciousness will help us out of it?
Absolutely, yes. Because then people will see the unity of all, the need to, because they say the only way to overcome chaos is through unity. We're now in chaos.
I hope you're right.
Well, I hope so.
One of the things that I wonder is like we
being in the higher dimension, you would not be selfish, and you would not have that, because this selfishness and exploitation is a lower energy. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I need to bring it to an end here. It's been great talking with you.
All right.
And
so before we wrap it up, where can my listeners find you? I mean, you've mentioned the website a couple times, but repeat it one more time, and I'll also post the website.
Amazon.com, David K. Miller. And then the website, www.groupofforty.com. And there's also at the website the ways that they should be there, because we have many activities around the world. And so I could update people, or they can be updated by the newsletter.
Awesome. I will post those in the notes to episodes so my listeners can buy your books, check out your site, and join your organization if they want to.
Right. And I have quite a large voluntary staff around the world that is helping me. I'm just not doing this myself, including my wife, who's also helping me greatly. And I have, volunteers in South America, Australia, New Zealand, and in Europe that are all joining together to help me with this project, because it's quite a large project. And we're doing more and more meditations. For example, we probably do 50 meditations a month for bio-relativity. As I said earlier, we have like 60 planetary cities of light, and we're,
Thank you very much for being on today.
Well, Gary, it's my pleasure, and thank you and your listeners for the openness to these questions, and let me know if I can be of any further assistance in the future.
You got it. Absolutely. You're welcome back anytime.